Hi everyone, welcome to the final week of your college algebra course. This is week 10. So since this is week 10, we're covering a small amount in chapter 12. But in addition, you will have a discussion post, but this week the discussion post is not going to be like the previous weeks. Instead, this week you're going to be answering some feedback questions. So giving me some feedback on some of the experiences you've had in the course and things such as that. Things that I can do to improve the course, things that I can share with my boss to improve the course and to make things better for students coming up through the course. And then you'll also have an assignment. This week's assignment is fairly short. I believe there might be only about 10 questions on it. So just one or two from each section in chapter 12. And then, of course, the most important thing this week will be the final exam. The final exam will cover the material in the second half of the course. So everything since the midterm exam will be covered on the final exam. Please keep in mind that you must finish everything by Thursday. I cannot accept any late work this week. Everything has to be turned in by Thursday, and then the grades will be posted. So if you have any questions, problems, whatever, please address those right away and make sure you get everything completed by Thursday. Again, that's just really, really key this week is getting all that work turned in. Chapter 12, we're just going to, kind of touch on some of these topics in chapter 12. It's really the last chapter obviously of the course, but it kind of, just builds a little bit off of chapter 11, kind of some new topics as well, but don't get too hung up in the detail of this chapter because it's really just an introduction for you. So what we're going to be talking specifically about is exponential functions and logarithmic functions. And these are just some of the topics that are in the first section of 12.1. And the first thing you need to know is, what do we mean by an exponential function? So anything that has a rational exponent, and they give you an example here, 7 to the 2/3 power, is an expression. And it says, well, what about if we have an irrational exponent? In other words, what if it is a square root or something like that? So this is just kind of giving you some ideas of how we would solve those types of situations. Anytime we have a positive irrational exponent, we can interpret it like this. So it would be a range. So it's going to be somewhere in between these two things because the square root of 2 is between 1.4 and 1.5. Then the 7 to the square root of 2 would be between these two values. And then depending on how we would round that square root of 2, we can estimate or evaluate that expression a little bit tighter or a little bit closer. So you can see how changing the way we round the square root of 2 is going to change our estimation of that particular expression. So the definition of an exponential function is simply where we have any function where a is a positive, anything other than 1, and you have an exponent x, or an x as your exponent. Okay, so they're going to show you some graphs of these things. So this is an example of the graph f of x where it is equal to 3 to the x, and they're just going to show you how it changes as that exponent changes. What happens to the graph? Okay, so it's no different than any of our other functions where we had something like just 3x plus 2. This time our x is the exponent. Okay, that's what makes it an exponential function. And then notice if we change the function a little bit, it's going to change the curve. So notice the first one was 3 raised to that exponent. The next one is 1/3 raised to that exponent. So it's the flip. We flipped it. So that's going to show us how that's going to look, so to speak. So that's what section 1 is all about, is just kind of defining what is an exponential function and how does that all work. Then you're going to get into what we call a compound function. So what we're talking about there is where we have one variable depends on another variable, and then that variable depends on a third variable. So that's called a compound function. Okay, and you'll see that used in a variety of things. This is an example of when you might need a compound function, is when you have compound interest. Kind of makes sense there, right? And then we're going to be looking at inverse functions. We're going to be looking at the logarithmic functions. So all of that, like I said, is covered in this chapter this week. But again, we're just barely touching on it just to kind of get some of the key concepts. So don't really worry too much about the detail behind all of these. If you have any questions at all, please make sure you reach out to me. But more than anything, I really want you to make sure you focus on managing your time this week. Everything must be in by Thursday, so please contact me if you're going to have any problems. And have a great week, and it was a pleasure having you in course. Thank you.